Welcome to another RaiderPower.com mailbag. I'm Jarret Johnson. I'm happy to be joined once again by senior writer Joe Yeager. Joe, what's going on, man?
Nothing much, man. Just hanging in there.
I hear you. We're going to dive right into these questions. We have a bunch of good ones from y'all again. We're going to start off with one from Rawls Landman. He wants to know, this is a great question, what position that Tech is perceived to be weak in, or to be a weak spot, do we think is going to exceed those expectations and possibly even be a strength next year?
Yeah, I would go with safety, and for a couple of reasons. Number one, J.J. Gaines is a guy who has probably fallen off of everybody's, except for the people around here who know, everybody's radar, if he was on their radar ever to begin with. But that's a guy, if he comes back and returns to form, then he is going to make a difference, I think, on the Tech defense. Probably help Tech with generating turnovers, and it'll be a spark plug back there. And then with Keenan Ward on the other side, you've got a guy who, right now in coverage, not so hot, but he's a really good run force guy, good tackler, and I think in time he's going to develop into a solid coverage guy, and he's going to be a physical presence back there in the defensive backfield. Then you've got, I think, what is really, really good depth potentially at this position with Dorian Crawford and Josh Keys, a couple of guys who towards the end of the spring began to come around and make a little bit of noise, and that should only increase and continue. Jalen Barnes, we still don't know about too much, but then there's this other guy coming in that if you've watched these things and you've heard me talk about him before, Peyton Hendricks. That's a guy, it's just a question of how quickly he picks it all up. And if he's a quick study and learns the system quickly, then he immediately makes an impact. And so you put all that stuff together, and you've got a position that goes from being a question mark into possibly an exclamation point.
Yeah, that's a great pick for sure. Safety. I had to go with offensive line just because last year it was considered a weakness. I know there's still some question marks coming into this year, but they returned 4 starters. I think the big questions last year was inexperience and depth, and they bring back 4 starters. They're adding the 2 JUCOs and Dominique Robertson and Shaq Davis, who are going to add athleticism and size and some experience at the JUCO level at least. And then when you throw in Tony Morales into the mix, if he could stay healthy, then we're talking about a completely different offensive line in theory, especially with another year in the system, in the strength and conditioning program for these guys. I really like their ability to be much improved this year over last year and surprise a lot of people. That was a great question, though. Next question is from Red Raider 28. Recruiting question. He wants to know about defensive tackles. I love talk defensive lineman recruiting. He said with the 2015 class right now, that Tech is putting a ton of effort into 5 guys, especially Courtney Wallace from Louisiana, Zach Abercrombie from Dallas Skyline, Khalil McKenzie, who's a West Coast guy, California, a 5-star guy. Who else do we have here? Darian Daniels, yes, the Tech legacy, of course, from Dallas Bishop Dunn, and the guy from Tyler JC that we talked about last week, who always butcher his pronunciation of his name, Motekai Male. Well, first of all, obviously Khalil McKenzie would be great, Joe, to get 5-star guy, but he recently this week narrowed down his list to Arizona and Tennessee, so Tech's out of it. So really, out of the other 4, I don't know. I know the least about Courtney Wallace. I mean, I've seen his highlights, but I haven't seen him live. I've seen Abercrombie. We've spoken with Male, and Daniels, of course, who I've talked to, and he's a Tech legacy. So I'm more familiar with those guys. But I guess I'd go with the high school guys just because you have more eligibility. But that being said, if you can get 2 of those 4 guys, as you pointed out, Red Raider 28, to pair with Fehoko, then you're talking about some serious business there. Talking about a type of defensive tackle class that we haven't seen with Texas Tech in a while.
Change the program.
So that'd be pretty exciting. Question is a basketball question from Motor City Titans fans, or Titans fan. Okay, this is a good one. Best guess, what's the over-under for early signing period signees next year? In 2014, that class, they got Justin Gray and Zach Smith, and they already had a commitment from Keenan Evans, who ended up signing later on. So what's your over-under there for, of course, they have a limited amount of scholarships.
Sure.
So what do you think?
Well, I think maybe some of it depends. Well, I know depends on Shane Henry, the JUCO guy out of Georgia. He's visiting Virginia Tech this coming weekend, and depending on what he does, if he goes ahead and signs with Texas Tech as opposed to Virginia Tech, then it looks like, to my best of my accounting, that Tubby will have one scholarship to work with. Yep. If he doesn't, then it doesn't look like there's anybody else out there that's really on Tech's radar for right now. So he would have 2 scholarships to work with. And in that sort of situation, who can really know exactly what's going through his mind? But I've got to think that if he's got a good fish on the line or 2 that he can bring in, then he's not going to waste his time and play around and hope that he can get somebody later on. If he's got the prospects that he knows he can bring in, then he will sign them immediately. And if not, then if he's doesn't have anybody that he's satisfied with, and he sees somebody else in that second signing period that he really thinks that Tech's got a good shot with, then he waits. So it could be anything from 0 to 2.
So that's what I was going to say. Over under 1.
Yeah.
Put over under 1 there. PTU Gunslinger 84. You want to know if every player that was supposed to show up June 1st made it to campus, and not sure about the JUCOs. I haven't been able to confirm every single guy, but most of the guys that were expected to be in have made it in. As far as JUCOs, Joe reported he was the first one probably anywhere that Rico Levy made it to town because you saw him at the airport, right?
Yep. That was being a bloodhound, real sleuth out there.
Joe was you were just camping out, huh? Look, he was at the airport all day, just hanging out to see who made it in.
I do for you guys.
Marcus Smith has been cited. It's been posted on the site, but it definitely he's been cited. And of course, some of the Keelan McElrath, who was a midterm guy, of course he was already in, and Josh Keys. But I'll definitely be giving updates on some of the other guys. The main guy who didn't make it in, who said he was going to make it in, and has kind of everybody holding their breath, especially right now with the MLB draft starting. And this leads us to our next question. Tapadaka wants to know, with Mahomes not showing up last weekend, even though he said originally he was going to, should Texas Tech fans be worried about him possibly foregoing college, foregoing Tech, and just playing pro baseball?
Well, maybe it's just my nature, but, until a guy is here and on campus, I never count on anything. Yeah, he says he's going to be here, and, he probably will be.
To be fair, he enrolled, and he went through orientation. He just didn't move in. Mm-hmm. And he, actually, the Lubbock Avalanche Journal had a good story about basically he already has a ticket to come back if he doesn't sign a contract. So he has a ticket to come back to Tech already paid for. So it just depends on how much money or how much money he's paid. So just to be fair.
Yeah. Well, that sounds good. That sounds really good. I'll feel better when he's actually here and he's got the pads on. But, yeah, okay.
There's nothing I can add to that. That's so true. Another question from Rawls Landman. He wants to know, basically, what's a rough estimate of players that give a verbal commitment and back out? This is really hard to answer. It varies probably depending on the program. I don't know if you were talking about specifically with Tech or just in general.
If I could.
Of course.
And no. I don't know this for absolute certain, but I'm pretty sure I read somewhere on the internet, so it's got to be right, that about actually 90% of the players who commit to a school actually wind up at that school.
Okay.
Now I can't test. I'm not swearing on the Bible or anything like that, but I think that's about what it is. So you got about a 9 in 10 chance, theoretically, that if the guy commits to whatever school, that's where he's going to wind up at.
Wow, that sounds pretty high to me, but I'll take your word for it. Motor City Titans fan has another basketball question. He wanted to know, when was the last time Texas Tech had a top 50 class? I had to do some digging for that. And what I came up with from all the recruiting sites, basically was 2005. And the main reason that 2005 was rated in the top 50 was because they had eight signees, which is a lot. Only a couple of guys really stand out from who really saw playing time. Michael Prince, of course, you remember, kind of a role player, 6-man defender, for Bobby Knight, and Alan Voskuhl, who he actually played a lot.
Yeah,
he was a pretty good player.
I think he had 36 against Kansas.
Wow, that's right. I forgot about that. That's right. So that was the last time. It was almost a decade ago that they had a top 50 class. And Joe, I know you wanted to add more to this as far as the history of the recruiting class.
Yeah, I can't, testify to an exact top 50 or anything, but I know Tech had a couple of sort of prominent recruiting classes in fairly recent history. 2007 Pat Knight class with Dwaylon Roberts, John Roberson, and Mike Singletary. Yeah. Again, I don't remember exactly where it was rated, but all three of those guys were like maybe top 10, top 12 Texas players. And that was really considered a great recruiting class. And then in 2004, a couple of guys that were really national recruits, Terry Martin out of Louisiana and Dior Lohorn from the Bay Area out in California. Both those guys were like national top 100 players, and they both wound up transferring out. I think Martin maybe midway through his freshman year. Lohorn played a year or more and was turning into a really good player, and then under mysterious circumstances, I think it had something to do with his dad wanting him to come back to California. He left, transferred to the University of San Francisco, I believe it was, and turned out to be a great player for them, probably playing overseas somewhere right now. Yeah. But those were the two classes that sort of stand out in my mind. But you got to remember, Tech was winning a lot of basketball games back then. And you're talking NCAA tournaments on a regular basis, a couple of Sweet 16s. If you got that going on, if you got the wins, you got the prominence of the NCAA tournament, Sweet 16, that helps recruiting a lot. So, I mean, if Tubby can get to the point where he's beginning to get some traction in wins and losses, then you're going to see that recruiting class bounce up. And I think he can recruit better than those two recruiting classes.
That was another great question from Motor City Titans fan. We have one from Syntex. Basically, he wants to know, is there anything with any kind of stipulation as far as how late a game can be and how late TV can schedule? And he cited, the UTEP game with the 10 o'clock start. Joe, do you want to, try and dive into this one?
Well, I can offer an opinion more than anything else. I mean, I'm not aware of anything like that. But just from my personal standpoint, it seems to me that that's the responsibility of the fans. If you don't think that you're capable of driving home after a late game, then you shouldn't be going to the game, or you shouldn't be getting behind the wheel. If you can't do that, then don't go to the game. And if you have an accident or something like that, don't go blaming the TV networks who schedule this stuff and everything. Ultimately, that's your responsibility. But I don't know what the scoop is on that, but if there was some sort of an accident, God forbid, I can imagine the media running with it, and then who knows where it would go.
And the final question, another one from Tapadaka. Joe, any summer vacation plans? If so, where, what?
What spring, what summer vacation? I tell you, hey, my regular hangout place is Ruidoso. If I can get to those cool mountains, then I'm good. I don't have to go any place too special. That would be nice. Nothing's scheduled right now, but hopefully I can do that.
I'm in the same boat. I mean, I was expecting it to be a little quieter around here in June than it is right now in Tech Athletics, but hey, I'm loving it. And I think my family and I may sneak off to see some family in Dallas and Austin, but I'll have my laptop with me. I'll be working, producing content for y'all. But no, August is right around the corner, really, when you think about it. And I'll speak for Joe. We can't wait for it. But that's going to do it for this week. Another great edition, another great round of questions. Joe, I really appreciate it. Really appreciate it from y'all. Till next week.